Welcome to the SOB radio show, where we have fun, interesting guests, and hot topics. Each week, we offer insights into music, fashion, health, fitness, and humor. Do you have the perfect guest for us to interview? I want to know. Drop me a line on our Facebook page at SpunkyOldBroad1 or reach out to me on our website at spunkyoldbroad.com. And now, back to the show. My guest today is Nancy Hopper. Nancy was CEO of her own company and a former radio host of the Nancy Hopper Show from Las Vegas. She's an author, speaker, success coach who has helped countless people transform their personal and professional lives through her keynotes, breakout sessions, and recently had her book published, which is named Who's Behind the Curtain for You? Learning the power of relationships and mentoring through her inspiring and hilarious stories and life experiences, audiences love and relate to her real life stories. She teaches individuals and companies how to accelerate their success by building relationships, mastering residences, follow-ups, and ultimately closing more sales. Welcome, Nancy Hopper.
Thank you. I used to have this little Energizer Bunny music in the background on my radio show, so it's great. Thank you, Gayle, so much.
Oh, that's all right. It's so funny because that's what they used to call me, the corporate energizer, because I was just all over the place, and I know you're the same way. So why don't you start us off by telling us, a little bit about your background. We've talked about, a little bit in the introduction, but what are your beginnings?
Well, it's pretty funny. I had this amazing situation happen when I really started a sales career. I was at 5 years old at a microphone. My dad was in the military, and I was attending a Catholic school. And so anyway, the nuns loved productions, and so Mother's Day was around the corner. And they picked me to memorize this 26-verse poem called My Mother by Ann Taylor. So anyway, they said, you cannot tell anybody and you cannot practice in front of anyone. And I really think, Gayle, it's the first time I ever kept a secret because I was so afraid of the nuns. And so Mother's Day came and my mom and dad were in the middle of the row and it was packed. And I walked out and grabbed this giant silver microphone. And when I did, I just walked up and said, My Mother by Ann Taylor. And I rattled off this long poem. And when I got through, I was unbelievable. I mean, I literally became a superstar. I don't even know how much I could read at 5, but I had it memorized. And so the rest went on in my history. I had this self-confidence that my dad had given me at 10. And I started selling, I got hit in the mouth with a baseball bat, and he made me sell pot holders. And I made more money selling pot holders than I did babysitting. So I began to fall in love with sales. And so as my career went on and I was top in the nation in sales, at 42, I asked my mom, hey, do you have that black and white picture of me in the Philippines standing at the microphone? And I'm going to use it for a promotion in a convention. She said yes. So I went over to her house. We sat down, we looked at the picture, and we started laughing and laughing. And there it was. Sister Margarita's habit and the tip of her black shoes were behind the curtain, right behind me. I never memorized the poem. And she actually called the words out to me and made me be the unbelievable superstar. But
well, now I'm not as impressed, Nancy. I'm not as impressed now.
Yeah.
I was thinking to myself,
well,
wow.
My mother says I did memorize that poem, and she just gave me a word or two. But I had such inner confidence that, when someone said, can you break a record that's $2.5 billion a year? I said, yeah, I'll be number one in the nation. I just knew I could do it because of this poem. So that's how my career really started.
That's so funny because my first on stage appearance was at 3. I was in a dancing recital. I was January. There were 12 of us, the 12 months of the year, and I was first. I was January, and we did something the Skaters Waltz, and I came out, and whatever I did a somersault. And my crown fell off, and so I put it back on, and evidently I put it on backwards. I mean, my mom was telling me this, and everybody was laughing. So I I I stopped the music. I put my hands on my hips. I waited until everybody quieted down. I guess somebody must have told me about the crown because I turned it around, and then I told the piano player to start up again, and I finished my dance. And my mom said, "I knew then I was never going to have to worry about you," So I'm sure your
No,
mom
you
said
could do
the
it.
same thing, right? I don't have to worry about Nancy because look what she did, a 26 verse speech. Well,
Right.
you've got a lot of energy. I mean, we met at the National Speakers Association and we sat next to each other, and you were just a ball of energy then. And so, why don't you tell us a little bit about what your strengths are, and then if you have any weaknesses?
If I have any weaknesses,
Well, what your
wait,
strengths
where'd you guys?
are, and then
Yeah.
if you have any weaknesses, yeah, tell us those too.
Yes, I do. Well, I can tell you right now, a strength of mine is that I have this natural energy, encouraging, motivation personality. Another strength is I'm coachable, like a sponge. I've always listened to others that have had more experience, and I found it just charming that I accidentally sat down next to you, and I was thrilled to death to learn and hear your stories. And I've always just learned, and it's a strength, and people have never really understood it until they really understand what I'm going to say, is I learned to fall in love with people. And I always try to find something really good with them that was something that even they didn't even recognize. And a weakness of mine would absolutely have to be delegating and letting other people help me, because I've had to learn and accept human errors, and I make them, and that we're all in the people business. And so I'm really tireless. I work all the time. I love what I do and love helping people. So I'm really, delegating is something is something you have to learn. It's an art, and to really trust other people. And it's been really great. I'm getting better at it.
Well, it's funny that you say that because I used to speak on delegation, and I know it's tough because when I had a company with 7 offices, and actually how I started delegating was the fact that as I opened more offices, I realized I could do many things at one time, but I couldn't be in many places at one time. And
Right.
so I started hiring people to run the offices and to do various tasks, etc. And it was out of necessity, or I wasn't going to grow. And I found
Mm-hmm.
that very, very difficult. And it was very funny because the first things I did was I had modeling schools, and I just thought I was the best modeling teacher in the world, and nobody could teach it the way I taught it. I mean, I was really
Mm-hmm.
good. Guess what? When they had me, they loved me. But if they didn't know me, why, the other teacher was just as good. And I found that the other teachers developed their own people that just followed them and admired them. And even though they taught completely differently than I did, I mean, they were teaching the basic information, but they did it differently. They were loved by their students. And that was the first time I realized, something, I may do it well, but it doesn't matter if I'm the only one that does it well, as long as other people can do it and people are learning and appreciating and loving. Um, that's all that counts. And that is
Exactly.
really how I learned to delegate. It's not easy because you really believe you're the only person who can do it. And you may be for that particular task, but in that way, but not only person who can do it. So you've done a lot of things. Why and how did you end up with a speaking career?
I believe that I was just driven in seeing the way that people's lives changed on one thing that I might teach. In anything that I taught, I'm results driven already. And when I helped and saw an organization or a company or individuals actually apply a method of my sales techniques, and they said, I had a young guy just tell me the other day, he's 31, a millennial, darling guy, and he said, Nancy, I just want to tell you something before we hang up, that I really learned from you when I talked to you because you told me to quit doing business on the internet and interface with people, even if I did door-to-door or cold calling. And it's so true. He wanted to interview me on the internet on doing an insurance policy, and I said, no, I want to meet you, and I want to get to know you. And he said it's changed his whole manner, his DMO, of how he's operating now. And he's going to be, I said, you're going to be teaching people when you're 50. You're going to have your own story of your success. And this is how you really find out how to handle objections. This is how you really grow. And that's why I think results driven, and I love to, I hear people say motivation doesn't mean a lot, but I love to get fired up. I mean, when I heard Zig Ziglar or Jim Rohn, I got fired up and I applied a principle of theirs, and it changed my life. So I think there's a lot to say in enthusiasm, energy, that I love it, and I love the content that I deliver to people.
Well, I think that's very, very important because, I mean, with all the electronics that we have now and so forth, it's still nothing like face to face. And that's why maybe people like to do, FaceTime on the phone, and they like the video Skype and the Zoom meetings and things like that. But there's still nothing like touching. In fact, I was at a veteran speakers retreat this past weekend, and these are people who are, you have to be over 50, and we're only 60 people are allowed to come. And there are some really heavy hitters in there, but we never talk business. I was in a shared ride with the two other people that were going who I knew, and they said, well, what do we expect? We've never been. What do you do? What do you talk about? I said, we don't talk about business. All we talk about is life and personal stories and where we're going next. And I thought maybe they wouldn't like it because they're in their prime of their careers, even though they're over 50. And they both signed up for next year because they loved it so much. So when when people meet you, what is your personal brand? What do they see when they meet Nancy Hopper?
I think the one thing I'm told so much, and almost every time I encounter with other people that I coach or work with, they say, I want what you have. And I go, you can have it. They just see this natural energy and motivation and desire. And I think that if we could bottle the one word desire, we'd be multi-gazillionaires, because desire comes from within. It's different from being driven. Some people might want to debate that. But the desire is you get out of bed and get those feet going at 4:30 or 6 in the morning because you want to be good at what you do. You want to know who's going to be in front of you that day. And I think when people really meet me, it's like, I want what you have, and you can have it. But I've never been good on, like attitude to the best. And I really like to see desire, that you want it. Even if you make mistakes, we all do that. And that's what I think I hear the most about on branding on myself.
Well, of course, I met you at NSA, National Speakers Association, and you are a bundle of energy. But then again, you live your life a certain way. I mean, you tout health products. You take care of yourself. You eat a certain way. All of that gives you the energy that you have. And you said something. You said, well, people need to, wake up with this desire. Well, I know a lot of people who have the desire, but they don't follow through. I mean, they just, I don't know, somewhere in their day, it fizzles out. And so, it isn't easy having energy, and it isn't easy having a desire that you follow through with. And it isn't easy doing all the things that people do to be successful. So, where do you see yourself in 1 to 3 years?
Hey, Gail, can I just make a comment about that last thing about where
Of
you and
course,
I
you can
met?
say anything you'd like.
I want to say this is that after I met you, and that was awesome, and I didn't know where that was going to go, and I just thought you were just absolutely charming, and you had been through some familiar things that I knew that I had been through. And what I remember is leaving the big meeting, and I was in heels and dressed up, and I walked out. I was walking with a girlfriend, and I said, "Oh my gosh, there's Gayle." And you were sitting on this bench outside the entrance door of 1,500 people, and everybody was in a rush to go to a meeting or go to dinner or go to a dance. I can't even remember it. But when I ran back to Gayle in my heels after this big 1,500 people meeting, convention we had at National Speakers, I said, "Oh my gosh, it was such a pleasure meeting you." And you just looked up at me, and most people might think you had a judgment call on me, or I might have thought, and you just said, "Well, it was a pleasure." And you said something to me, and I ran back to my girlfriend. And she was like, why do you run over there or whatever? And I said, "Well, I think when you said you want to put me on a radio show, might have been me running back." So it's interesting, isn't it? If you just make a little bit more extra effort towards someone else, and you're sincere and you're authentic and transparent, it might really help you and get you going where you want to be.
Well, that's true. I think but again, it's your follow through. It's a follow through that you have to do. And it's just amazing to me how many people accept no. You know, there's a lot more to it.
Yeah,
Don't accept no. I mean, you might a first or second time, but you got to keep going back. That's all there is to it. So,
exactly.
what do you think is the difference between you and your competition? What you do, how you do it, how they do it? What do you think the big difference is?
I think my authenticity in my stories and my background, the way I've built out my sales career and my techniques, are really something that I was a student of the best teachers in sales, and I did use many techniques, but then I created my own. And I find that people get on Google and they search out what they're going to put in a book or what they're going to talk about. And that's something that I just don't do. I hear when I tell a story, they want to retell it and they want to remember it. And then the main thing is they can relate to my stories, because we all have these great paths that cross. We all have one common thread that we can find in each other that connects. And I really believe that what makes me different is that my relationships I've built on the back end of my business. It's one thing to sell someone at the beginning and then earn the trip and win things like this. But when you have clients that continue to refer you on the back of a front end sale, you really have learned how to build a Tiffany box of business, because that's where you make the most money. It's the back end. And I think that's what really makes me personally different, is that I'm just so committed in learning how to get better at what I do and helping others get better at what they do.
Well, you see, and that's the key. Now we're on a show with women who are 50 plus. And the convention we've been talking about, the National Speakers Association, this was my 38th convention. And people say to me, "Don't you know it yet?" And I say, "Well, when I stop learning, I better stop doing." I think that's what keeps people active and interesting and just happy, is that they're learning new skills all the time. And that's part of becoming the person that you could potentially be, whatever you want to be. But you're talking primarily about sales. And so, since I know that most speakers, probably 99% of them, hate to sell, and especially hate to sell themselves, how do you approach it in the speaking business versus your other business?
Well, I think we sell ourselves every day. And so in my weight loss company that I own, I still listen and ask questions of what their wants are, what their desires are with their health. And when it comes to speaking, and like you said, 99% don't want to sell, but don't be afraid of stepping out and really engaging, learning from other people, because we sell ourselves all the time. I've walked into a room of 300 people at a networking meeting, and with my personality, I mean, I'm like doing the Saturday Night Live, sweating underneath my armpits because I don't know anyone in there. But once you connect and walk in and just say your name, and I have a rule of say your name 3 times and just get people to know you. And once you continue to build these relationships, you are selling yourself. And we do it every day. I mean, nobody, rejection. Let me say this. Rejection makes you go, oh boy, don't reject me. I'm fearful of that. Or I may quit selling because that hurt. Nobody wants that. But the real key is learning how to handle objections. And when people say, well, I want to do this program or I want to learn this technique, but how much effort is it going to take? And you being honest and saying it's going to take some practice. And you didn't just learn to walk in one day, so let's go. By the way, my age is I'm well over 50. And I had someone think the other day I was 48, Gayle. And I hadn't even had anything done. I'm going to get in the plastic surgery, girl. I'm telling you right now. But I think that it's the way you carry yourself. And there's so many women that want to be healthy, but many of them just want to feel good and have energy. And I handle adversity all day long. And I can tell you about that too. But I hope I answered that question the way you wanted to hear it.
Oh, yeah. I think, networking, people talk about networking events and how they hate to go to them because everybody's just looking for what can you do for me kind of thing. But in really true networking, you pay attention to the person you meet and you talk to them for a little bit. If you can help them, great. If they can help you, great. Maybe you can introduce them to someone else who might be able to be better for them. And that's a very important thing too, because people remember that. But like you say, I mean, at this event this weekend, there were people that I've known for a long time, but have not really sat down and talked to. And most people think I'm in my middle to late 60s. And of course, I'm 80 years old. I'm closer now to 81.
I know. I'm blown away, Gayle. You look so awesome.
And, I keep going like crazy, and I keep a travel schedule that's insane. And my own son says to me, Mom, I could never do what you do. And so he called me the other night, and I said, well, he said, what are you doing? I said, I'm sitting in the Dulles airport, because there wasn't a plane until 7 o'clock that night. But I think that, having the ability to really make people feel comfortable and just do well with them, that makes all the difference in the world. And I think that's number one, you look great. Number two, you're animated, you're enthusiastic, you're a pleasant person to speak to. How many people, Nancy, do you talk to that are glum looking? Or, they answer you, oh, no, and that makes all the difference. People want to know you. So I think that's a big difference right there. So,
I balance well, just like you. I can't be all the energy and be running around with all the energy people. People all have different types of energy. And I love being with someone that's the sidekick. That I remember I met a lady one time, a long time ago, and she was so quiet and just always looking at me. And I thought, well, she probably doesn't like me and, whatever. And then I went up to her and started talking to her. And you know what she said? I'm extremely shy. And I then began to fall in love with her because I thought, yeah, everybody's different and everyone has what they are working through and wanting to get better at that. And so we view people in one way, like people thought she was a snob.
Exactly.
And that's what they thought. And she was shy. And I tell that story. I'm telling it now. I haven't told it in a long time. So the women that are listening, you may come across in a different way, and someone may say, well, that's what you are. But we know you're deeper than that. You've got stories within you, and we want to hear them.
Exactly. Well, hold on, folks. We're coming to the end of part one. We're going to be back with Nancy in just a few minutes. Hold on.